So this is the second video I'm actually making on checklists, and I know I can probably see half of you, yawning off already. Well, it's not time to go to sleep just yet, because I think that this is the most slept on, no pun intended, thing that people can do when investing, because your brain your brain is very good at essentially filtering out the objects and the sort of decisions which you don't necessarily agree with or you can't find the logic to. So it's very good at sort of hiding those and forgetting those. And essentially, by going through a list of items, you're forced to sort of bring it up. It's the reason why pilots have this implemented when they do any sort of procedure. It's the reason why Monish Pabrai has a checklist of 200-300 questions. Now, does yours need to be super long? No. But what it can help you do is you can have a set few questions where historically, if you've been invested for a while, that I've been pretty weak at this. So for me personally, I can give you an example. I typically used to prefer and favor and more high growth companies and I'd be more accepting of a cash burn. And what that means is just the business essentially is unprofitable, because I think that's just part of my nature, is just being quite optimistic. And it's only after I've become burnt by a couple or two in my past that I've sort of realised I'm over optimistic in certain scenarios. So that's where I need a checklist, sort of rule myself back in and say, well, actually, am I over relying on numbers management producers? So many companies out there that say next year we're going to turn profitable, we're going to hit these targets, and guess what? 80% of them don't. So you just really need to be careful with that. And every individual have their own little things that they perhaps are their blind spots, and you're only gradually starting to pick them up. And once you can identify and pick them up and work with them, you'll know that you'll be able to make less mistakes as a result. Again, there's a reason why Monish Pabrai has hundreds of questions. Another thing that he's done in the past is sort of looked at what all the famous investors, smart investors, have done and what mistakes have they made, because they're quite intelligent, they're quite informed, they know what they're doing, they spend the time, and could it be preventable, and then apply that. So good ones to get started off, he has mentioned it, is essentially over leveraged. Do they have lots of debt? Are they over leveraged? The management team is a big one for him, and there's a couple others there's quite a few others that he has. In terms of what Lee Lu, another famous investor, huge returns as well. In case you don't know him, he's averaged about 30% over the last decade or two, which is just insane, running an entire fund essentially as well. And his sort of criteria that he always checks when during one of his talks, he's mentioned is three things, which is completeness of information, meaning, is there any information that I don't have that I'm missing out? Accuracy of information, is there any information which is inaccurate? And number three, was there an insight that I thought was an insight but wasn't? So was he wrong on an insight? I know some of these may not be necessarily helpful immediately, but if you can ask yourself these, even though it may not be obvious, something may just come to the back of your mind and go, actually, that flags in my head when I was reading through that annual report earlier. So again, I'm just emphasising the importance of checklists here, and it is an advantage. Yes, it can be a pain to, you've done all your research, you've done all your work up, you're ready to go, you're ready to finally take a small piece of action, right, according to your plan. But now you've also got to do another whatever amount of questions it is to then confirm you've got everything ticked off, and those small changes can differentiate you from making a mistake. Or even if it's not a mistake, when I've done this checklist process, what I've realised is, at first when I'm looking at companies, I may be very pessimistic because I think, oh, it's not going to be my criteria, it's another one that's going to get filtered out. And once it doesn't sort of get knocked out immediately, like it's not too expensive, it's not having a poor return on capital, and once it's actually meeting these criteria, and then I turn very optimistic. I'll become very optimistic about the opportunity. I see all the potential in it and the upside scenario, and how it's met my criteria, and there's a bit of excitement there as part of that exploration process. But then what I've realized when I've come to do these checklists is I've found blind spots where actually perhaps I'm still going to be invested in the company, but now I feel a more balanced, a more realistic view of the business, where I might have not realised actually, because of factor number 3 and 5 mentioned in my questions, that actually I don't see margins expanding. In fact, I see them contracting over the next few years, which would reduce the return on this investment. But would it still be my criteria? Would I still be happy with it? And the answer can often be yes. So it's just giving you a better understanding, or perhaps as a fraud indicator, you missed out on items like that, which you need to question and understand on a deeper level to get a better understanding of the business. Thank you for listening. I hope that was valuable. If so, please give this a like and subscribe. Thank you.